Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm E.D. Lewis, and this is E.D. Lewis Reviews. And before we get started, please reach down to that, or scroll down to that little subscribe button. Please click that, and by the end of the video, please like the video if you like it, and please leave a comment. I love to read those comments. And if you do so, please make sure the comment is appropriate, PG, PG-13, G, nothing any higher. Thank you. So, I hope everybody is safe and healthy and is not going too stir crazy right now. Like I've said before, things will get better. It just takes time. We just gotta keep on doing what they tell us and just remain calm. Please, if you're sick, please stay home and don't go out and exposing other people. If you need things at the store, just get what you need. Don't hoard water or food or anything. Just get, if you need something, get the thing you need. Don't hoard it. Don't buy a whole bunch of it. You know, leave some for other people, please. We all got to work together. So, and practice diplomacy. I know it can be hard and stressful and easy to panic, but please don't panic, okay? Things will get better, if not sooner, then just a little later than sooner, but things will get better. But anyway, this time around, I'm going to do a review on a book. Last time I did a short story, The Vampire, by John William Polidori. This time we're doing a gothic romance, jumping back to that. And it's a female gothic, of course, as most gothic romances are, called The Dark Shore by Susan Howatch. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. But she is, she doesn't write anymore, I don't think, very much. I think the last book she wrote was like in 2012 or something like that. And she's a person who doesn't write mainstream writing anymore. This was actually her first novel from 1965. And a lot of her earlier books were gothics, and I think she turned away from that and when she started getting popular, and then she stepped away from it and started writing non-mainstream books. And I think she gives a lot of her money away to charities and stuff, I think. So I think she feels like she's a much more private person. I think she was honored back in 2014 during some ceremony or award. So, but anyway, this is her first book, and this is kind of a beat-up copy. I had to tape it together a little bit. When I got it, it was a little beat up, and I got it from my local bookstore. It was from, like, the first batch when I was starting to buy a bunch of gothic books to start my, rounding up my collection, which I already had plenty before that, but I got some more variety that way. And there was a couple other covers available, but I liked this one the most because it looked more like the traditional gothic cover with the woman running away, standing away from, walking away from, or running away from the house with the one light in it, and it just, this cover drew me to it, and so this is very good. And this book is also written in the style of Rebecca, like it says on the front cover, an absorbing novel of romance and suspense in the Gothic tradition of Rebecca and Lady of Malo. Which, of course, Rebecca, I have done a video on that, and if you haven't seen that one, check that out. And if you haven't read Rebecca, I highly recommend Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And you can get that pretty much, it's easy to get your hands on. So, anyway. So this book, like I said, is a gothic romance. It's written it was published in 1965. A while after Rebecca had been, because Rebecca was written, I think, in the 1930s. Similar to Rebecca in a lot of different ways, and I'll go over that because I actually made a small little list. I have my notes in front of me, of course, where I compared a few things to Rebecca without giving too much away. But it tells the story of John Towers, who is a successful businessman from Canada, originally from England. And someone just walked in. I hope he won't bump the camera. You know you're on camera, right? Anyway,
He's adorable.
I know he is. Anyway, he's a businessman from Canada, originally from England, where he returns to marry an heiress by the name of Sarah Hamilton. God. Who is the typical gothic, virginal heroine, who, the book does jump between perspectives. It does his perspective, her perspective, and a couple other characters, including his son, which I'll talk about in a moment. But she has a very strong fear of the wedding night, the activity afterwards, the consummating of the marriage. She has a huge fear about that, and even afterwards, she almost seems kind of traumatized by the whole thing. And she is so worried about it before they get married that she even is crying about it because she's so terrified for some reason about losing her virginity to her husband. And then she eventually kind of gets through it because, well, you'll have to. I highly recommend reading the book if you can get it. I will break the synopsis here for a little bit that I wrote. It's a little hard to get. There is no digital copy, so the only way to get it is if you have access to a local bookstore, which right now I know is really difficult, but in the future, I'd put it on your lists, or if you ordered it from a seller, which you might be a little sketchy about doing that right now, as I am for the time being. But it's still a really good book. But if you ever get the chance to read it, I would highly recommend this book. So, I know I normally talk about that a little bit later, but I just thought I'd go ahead and mention that now. But anyway, John has returned, not just to marry this heiress, who he plans on taking back to Canada with him, but also to patch things up with his son, who's become very estranged from since the death of his wife. And his son has become very successful, I think, in banking. I read this last year, so I'm a little sketchy on a few things. I had to flip through it to remind me of a few of the things that happened. But he is also trying to get in contact with his mysterious cousin named Marijohn. And so what happened 10 years earlier, prior to the book, John's wife, whose name is Sophia, died mysteriously. And at the inquest, it was ruled as an accident. Well, it seems like several of the characters are actually kind of suspicious about it, and they're not. And so it's kind of a question of who's telling the truth, who's altering the truth, who's really trying to investigate this, and who's actually trying to cover things up if there's anything to cover up. So it's a big mystery. And Sarah, John and Sarah do get married, but Sarah ends up, once they get married, and they end up going to spend one weekend before they leave for Canada at the house named Clougie, where they pretty much, where he and his son and everybody who was there that weekend have not been there in like 10 years. So they all return there for the weekend. And Sarah finds herself embroiled in this mystery of, Sophia's death. So, was she murdered? And if so, who did it? So. But that's kind of that. And the similarities I wanted to touch upon with this, that it has with Rebecca, is that it's an older man marrying a virginal heroine. The first wife died under mysterious circumstances, but has left a lasting impression, which I could go a little more into that, but that's giving too much away. But very Rebecca-like. There are many possible suspects to the mystery, as well as there's the big house, Clougie versus Manderley, which Manderley, I believe, was Max de Winter's ancestral home in Rebecca, whereas in this, Clougie, I think they bought the house together, he and Sophia, and so he's not from originally. I don't think he's from there originally. So, anyway, that's the big difference with that house, but the house is still somewhat important, and it's not in the whole book, but it is mentioned quite a bit. like I said, I love this cover, and there are other covers too. This book's even available in collections where they have collections of her stories and her books, and this is usually one of them. I'd probably read another by her, another one of her early Gothics. But the only thing I don't like about this cover is the back of it is very deceptive. It says, "Did the ghost of evil still hover over Clougy House?" And it says, soon after Sarah Hamilton steps into her new home as the bride of charming, enigmatic John Towers, a cold shock of instinct warned her to run for her life. Too many accidents were beginning to plague her. It seems like the way that it tells in this synopsis on the back of the book, because there's more to it, that she is, recently married this man. It's all about her, and, there's something strange about the house, and that she's come to live there and stuff, and that's not what the story... It doesn't focus entirely on her. More on her as the story goes on. But it still flips between characters, and she hasn't come there to live at all. It's not her new home. They're just visiting there temporarily, and she's not thrilled about being there because of its past, like what happened with his wife, and the too many bad memories that she's afraid might arise in her husband. But her husband seems around her to be very optimistic. Oh, it'll be fine, But it mentions the stuff about the first wife and her death, but it says... It talks a little bit about Mary John and her stuff and stuff, and then it talks about Justin, his son, and it said, who was out on the cliffs the night or his son Justin, who was out on the cliffs the night his mother fell, or his old friend Max, who seemed to be confusing the two Mrs. Towers. That never happens in the book. I mean, there is the question, because Justin is out that night when she dies, but I don't think he's ever considered to be a suspect. But the character Max confusing the two Mrs. Towers, he never confuses them. So that was kind of deceptive when I read it, because I read the back, even reread the back of it, read it a couple times, and then I read the back of it while I was reading the book, and I'm like, this doesn't match up at all. And so it's very deceptive. So... the last bit just kind of goes back to the husband. And it says, the dark shore is filled with the ingredients that made a bestseller out of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, which that's true. It is very similar to Rebecca, and it has a lot of the similar ingredients to it. And it's, so I'd highly recommend, especially if you loved Rebecca. So, if you ever get a chance, I would highly recommend The Dark Shore. It's a shame they don't have an audio for this. And that's by Susan Howatch. If anybody knows how to pronounce it, would you please, please let me know. On the front, their little tag says, the past followed the young bride like an evil shadow, threatening, intangible, and relentless. So. But yeah, a typical Gothic cover, and of course that's one of the things that drew me to it, and it is pretty good. And also that it was compared with Rebecca. I have Lady of Malo, but I've never read it yet, and I kind of am thinking I would like to read it sometime soon, so, yeah. Anyway, I would highly recommend this book. Very good, very entertaining, very much like Rebecca, so, if you like Rebecca, you'd like this, probably, so. Anyway, rather than that, I hope that everybody's safe and everything. I can't stress that enough. Excuse me. Check out my book, and since right now it's kind of tough to get things from Amazon, if you're interested in my book, The Cursor Bridge House, I would highly recommend, if you have Kindle, or if you're planning on getting Kindle, you can check it out on Kindle. It's only $2.99 on Kindle, so it's not that much, and you can get that at Amazon. I'll have a link below in the description. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll have links for that down below. If you'd like to read more of my stuff, I have actually an updated version of the preview for my first book, so it's the names and everything are changed, and so I have the first 2 chapters of my book available on Wattpad, as well as I have some short horror stories I wrote that are a series of really, really short ones, and I have at least 1 poem on there, and I don't remember if I have anything else on there right now at the moment. But I plan on, I'm working on a short story while I'm also working on my book. It's one I've already written, but I'm updating it and revising it, so as I go. And I plan on publishing that soon. I might also put it on Wattpad as well. So check that out. And if you'd like to visit my author page, I have the link for that down below. That's on Amazon. And also, please feel free, and please do, visit and like my page for my book, the official page for The Curse of Ridge House on Facebook. So with that being said, I'll see you next time, and have a good evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you see this. So, bye-bye.